Hello everyone, Jessica here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I use the Concord 9th Wreath Turnabout stamp. So the first thing I do is line up the packaging with the stamp image. That's why the images are on the back of these type of stamps. They give you the guide. So it makes it really easy. And all you have to do is match up the little images. Take as much time as you need to get that as close as possible. This took me a long time. I cut out so much of the clip because it was basically just my head in the way. So all you saw was the back of my hair. And that's just not very entertaining. So I lined it up and then I have this Sharpie. Now this Sharpie is pretty old. It's got a kind of a blunt rounded tip to it. If you have a new one, it would probably be a little better because the line will be thinner. But this is what I had. I would keep the packaging just in case the lines do fade away for some reason. And that way you can redraw them on if need be. So I have a 6.5 by 6.5 piece of white paper. This is nothing too extravagant, but what you do is you line up with a ruler to each corner and make a giant X through it. I just used a pencil because I could see the lines just fine. You could also go over that with a Sharpie. You see I've used this piece of paper already on the last Turnabout stamp video that I did, which I'll have linked below. I'm going to line up the Wreath Turnabout stamp onto that X and match up those lines. And then I can fold down the lid of the stamp platform and pick that up. I have a 110-pound Neenah card panel that I'm going to use to stamp on. I'm going to lay that over the top of this 6.5 by 6.5 guide. And I'm going to secure it with some washi tape because with the Turnabout stamps, you do rotate the paper. So you want to keep those aligned and in the same spot as much as possible. The first ink I'm going to be using is Wild Dandelion from Gina K. This is a very nice bright yellow, and I believe this is from her newest line of inks. After I'm done stamping it, I'm going to remove the magnets and then turn it to the right, so that's clockwise. You could actually turn it counterclockwise as long as you're going the same direction all 4 times. The next ink I'm using is Lucky Clover, and I just do the same thing. Ink up the stamp, shut the lid, and then I can turn it again 1 time to the right. The next color of ink that I'm using is Lipstick, also from Gina K. This stamp is completely stamped with Gina K inks. But same thing, ink it up real good. Stamp it down on your piece of paper, remove the magnets, and then turn it once to the right. The last color of ink that I'm using is Powder Blue, and coordinates very well with one of the pattern papers that came in the Cartabella 6x6 pattern paper pack from the Simon Says Stamp July kit, their monthly kit, which is what I'm also using, and that is partly why the Wreath Turnabout stamping had used such really pretty summer colors. So I'm going to use the stamp from the Simon Says Stamp July 2018 card kit, and this is the flamingo stamp, and this one has the coordinating die with it, which is really fun. This is also a Gina K ink paper called Dusty Rose. I'm going to zoom you in and I'm going to lay that right over the stamp and then die cut that out. So funny. And I'm actually going to do that 3 times, all with the same color, but I'm not going to stamp the other 2 layers. I wanted to add a little definition to this flamingo, so I took a couple of Prismacolor pencils, and I'll have those listed below on which colors I used. And I colored the beak of the flamingo yellow, and then added a bit of a lighter pink and a peach color just to the wings and feathers to give it more detail. And then I go over, of course, with my micron pen to darken up those lines from the stamping, because Prismacolor pencils will kind of fade that out if you accidentally go over the lines, which I do. And now I can stack those 3 layers using the Nuvo Glue Pen and tweezers, of course. Don't mind the black scrap of paper up on the top right. That was an idea I was going to go with, but I did not end up using that at all for this card. Once I have the flamingo all done and layered and drying, I'm going to take some circle dies. This is a set from We Are Memory Keepers, and I'm going to cut out the wreath. I'm going to cut out the wreath from that Concord and 9th Turnabout stamp. I also wanted to add more texture to the flamingo, so I'm adding white dots just to that lower belly portion. And for the sentiment, I'm going to use a scrap piece of black cardstock that I had. This is from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm going to stamp it using the Hero Arts Unicorn ink. And I did stamp that a couple times. Then I'm going to use White Ranger embossing powder over the top. This is kind of like my new favorite thing to do, I think. And I find it the easiest way to clean up this pigment ink from a stamp. It gets everywhere. But I just spray down the stamp that is still on the stamp platform with my distress sprayer. And then I can use my little chamois there to pick up most of the water, and then I use a microfiber cloth to really clean it up, and it helps. If I don't do that, a lot of the times my stamps will have a white residue on them, and this just kind of helps clean them up real quick and easy. I'm going to do a little fussy cutting to that sentiment. Nothing fancy. It's not perfect because it's really hard to make an even black edge with that kind of font, but it works. And next I'm going to create the background for this card. And this is using Simon Says Stamp Fog Cardstock and Simon Says Stamp Fog Ink. I'm going to do a tone-on-tone stamping technique with the sentiment from the July kit that coordinates with the flamingo. Now my ink pad of the Fog ink is pretty dry. I need to see if they have a re-inker for it. So I do have to stamp these quite a few times, so a lot of that is cut out. But it does look a lot darker than what it will be in the end. You can kind of see that in the pictures. Once that's done, I'm going to die cut that out with the Simon Says Stamp Rectangle Stitches die. And this is the largest one. And then I'm going to adhere that panel to a side fold A2 Neenah 110 pound cardstock base. And I'm using a side fold because instead of a top fold, because I don't have any more top folds. I kind of ran out of them and I need to pre-make some more. I cut out a circle of some of that pattern paper from Cartabella that came with the July Simon Says Stamp kit. I'm going to layer that behind the Concord and 9th Wreath Turnabout stamp. And then I can add some glue to the flamingo and layer that over that wreath. And it just gives a nice center point for that flamingo to sit. For the first half of the sentiment, I'm using some foam tape. I'm going to use my tweezers to get the release paper off. That makes it a little more easier to handle. And then I can set that right over the top, and that really bright white embossing stands out really well against that busy wreath border. For the inside, I just stamped the flamingo and fog ink down the lower right hand corner and then add the second half of the sentiment to the inside. The July kit also came with some Amy Tangerine puffy stickers that coordinate really well, and the colors work perfectly for the inks that I had used on the Concord 9th wreath stamp. So I'm going to add those to that, and it's just basically the flower ones that I'm adding to it, but I decided to add a little bird too. There's a couple different cute little bird images, so I'll add one there and then one right on top of that sentiment on the inside. The final step is to add some glitter from the Spectrum Noir glitter pen, and because that is water based and so is the white Signo gel pen that I had used for the dots, once that dried I had to redo those dots because it just totally washed it away, and I knew that would happen too, but I still did it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. You can connect with me on Instagram or email me directly or comment below with any questions you might have about card making. All the products I used today are linked on my blog. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to see the latest videos from me. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Meh, meh.